A word from our sponsors. Every day, your digital campaigns are missing nearly 40% of their target audiences due to identity fragmentation. That means that nearly half of your audience is invisible, unmeasured, and unmonetized. Reach out to Find Your 40 at adform.com. That's the number 40 to see what that missing 40% could mean for your revenue. Reach out to us. Again, that's Find Your 40 at adform.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Viant. Still investing in paid search, hoping to grow your business? Tides are shifting. AI tools have arrived. And in the end, search is simply capturing existing customers that already know your brand. The real growth, it's in creating new demand on CTV, where attention is high and co-viewing is the norm. Viant's AI-powered DSP puts your brand on the largest screen in the home across premium streaming content, including live sports, driving real outcomes. See why Viant leads in CTV at viantctv.com. That's viantctv.com.
Welcome to the AdTech God Pod, your window into the world of advertising technology and the people behind it. I'm your host, AdTech God.
Welcome to the AdTech God Pod, where I speak with the strategic minds of our industry. Today's guest is Mike Petrella, the Managing Director of Strategic Management at Kinective Media by United Airlines. Mike has been with United Airlines for more than 2 years, and before that held leadership roles at companies like Icaro, Yahoo, AOL, and advertising.com. His career reflects deep experience in the intersection of media, technology, and advertising. I'm definitely familiar with Mike. I've watched the transformation of United's media offering over the past year. I'm really excited to dig into Kinective Media and just hear about what they have planned for the future. Mike, thank you for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I remember you launching Kinective Media. I actually remember you joining Kinective Media and seeing it on LinkedIn. I'm sure a lot has changed since you've joined.
It has. I mean, first and foremost, I can actually say what I'm doing, right? It was when I first joined, we had yet to announce the fact that United was entering this space. Kinective Media name, wasn't a public name. So the fact that now we could talk about all the great things that we're doing and really how it impacts the airline, and it's exciting, right? And to work for a brand like United Airlines, there's a smile on my face that you can't see. But I love working for a premium brand with this power and then just bringing innovation to our travelers.
I am looking forward to hearing about it. I was actually browsing your site yesterday and the day before just to prepare for the call. I did not know about the full offerings. I knew of some of them, but not all of them. So I'd love to dig into it later. I guess before we kick things off, I'd love to hear a little bit about you and how you got to where you are today. Working at United Airlines, having worked at Yahoo, AOL, you probably have a great background and great understanding of the evolution of the space. So maybe if you want to take it back, maybe a quick summary of how you got to where you are today and where you think things are going after that.
Networking has really been the core of my success, right? And the ability to build relationships has helped me navigate, what I would call many a time rough corporate waters. So the way I even got into ad tech was I was playing in a band and my drummer's best friend was John Ferber. Came to band practice one day in a suit and tie, and John had asked me, John was there and he asked me why are you in a suit and tie? And I said, well, I had an internship with the FDA. I was a British literature major in college, so not the most progressive major, but he's like, you know what? You're one of the more responsible ones of the friend group. Come join me and my brother. We're going to start a company. And that was my interview into what was TechnoSurf and then turned into advertising.com. I won't take you through the full 23 years. However, for those of you familiar with the way AOL and Yahoo and even Verizon worked, we went through significant leadership changes over my 23 years there. And my ability to forge partnerships with my peers, with my leaders, and to really think of myself as part of something bigger helped me navigate in times where we had significant leadership change, right? In many cases, I think I had 7 bosses over a 5-year stretch. We were doing layoffs on an annual and sometimes semi-annual basis. And I joked that I was 22 for 23 in terms of layoffs. And besides working hard, it was the ability for me to form those partnerships and explain that, I'm here to support, I'm here to help. And I know that if I did my job, the organization would benefit. And that's helped me, just kind of navigate through, unfortunately impacted many folks. But the path to United actually came through advertising.com. There's a gentleman named James Rothwell. He was an account executive in the UK in 2001. I was an account executive in the US at that time. We'd remained close throughout our careers. And in 2022, we were talking about how each of us were looking for new opportunities. He was to be looking for something, as he was exiting Freewheel. I was at a startup where I wasn't the right person for the role. So we made it a point to keep one another abreast of any opportunities. He came to me in May of 23 and said there's an opportunity for, a partnerships role, at what could become a commerce media network if I was interested. He made the introduction to who my now boss, Richard Nunn, who had just taken over as CEO of Mileage Plus. Richard and I spoke, and 4 months post first conversation was August 14th, 2023, and I was the managing director of strategic partnerships for Mileage Plus.
So you started building it from scratch, right? This did not exist prior to you joining?
We did, complete white piece of paper, right? And it was exciting. That was the allure that brought me in, right? Build from scratch. I went to, or at advertising.com, we built from scratch. I was at a startup where I was trying to build and, again, not the right person for that role. And then it's Connective, or with Mileage Plus and, Kinective Media, it was the ability to put together what we believed was the proper foundation to scale and build a commerce media network.
So when you say commerce media network, this is, I think, something that I wasn't familiar with. I don't know if the listeners are. So my assumption was that your network was really built off of the screens in the plane only. But when I looked at your website, I realized it was omni-channel, it was the mobile apps, it was the websites, it was everything possible. Can you just kind of run through at a high level what Kinective Media offers today, what the properties are? Because for me, I really did just think it was the screens on the plane and not necessarily all the other touch points that a traveler would be using across the network.
Yeah, we talk about enriching traveler journeys, right? And I think it's important to define the journey. I mean, Kinective, right? We're the first traveler media network, and we're helping transform how brands engage with, consumers across that journey. And far more than just a media platform, like we are shaping the future of traveler commerce. We help brands connect with travelers in ways they enrich their journeys and they drive real business outcomes, right? And to your point, it's an omni-channel platform that gives advertisers access to high-value audiences of 174 million travelers annually, and an even richer insights into 63 million Mileage Plus members. From booking to gate to in-flight and even beyond the journey, we deliver very meaningful, personalized experiences. 5+ hours of average time spent researching trips. We talk about 1.5 to 2 hours of airport dwell time. Right? And perhaps the savant traveler is less in the airport like me, but our average flight time is 3.5 hours. And then when we think about like the United travelers, it's a very, very broad and rich demographic, but 25% of our travelers have a household income of above 250,000. So when we think about that, like that's compared to 7% on national average. The reason I'm saying these things, it's not reading from like a fact sheet or whatever. Like we have an incredibly valuable audience. We have a tech stack that's designed to bring scale, reach, connectivity, personalization, and measurement to advertisers. And we want to be innovative in terms of what we're offering to our customers. And that's the build part that I love, right? We've scaled rapidly. You've seen what we're doing, in the news. And so it's taking the elements of what ad tech was and modernizing them into a way just to be more efficient and effective.
Okay, so you mentioned business travelers, household income, the audience is engaged and there's a long dwell time when they're working with you, so like sitting in an airport or on the flight. How is that different than other audiences out there? Like I would assume that the amount of time that you have available to reach your users is significantly greater than an average site or network. Do you find that the advertisers, agencies are seeing a huge value in this? And what type of brands in particular would actually spend with someone like United or Kinective Media?
I mean, quite honestly, there's a use case for every single person on the plane, right? And that's the the greatest part about this. When we launched, we know that we index very highly against the affluent individual. So brands like Bottega Veneta, Macallan, and others, were part of our launch partners. And we do find, I guess, that I don't want to call it the difference, but the traveler journey encompasses many different attitudes, many different atmospheres, right? You have the inspiration, the planning, and in that time, it's looking at our .com and our app, and even digital hemispheres, right? We took the magazine off the plane, and we've created a digital entity that was now far beyond just print and content, right? This is content that could be translated on a personalized basis. You think about commerce opportunities. So in addition to just knowing, like, one of the parts of hemispheres is called 3 Perfect Days, and it's a 3-day agenda based on location. And by the end of this year, we'll have a 3 perfect days for every single destination we fly to. So now, we can think about beyond the inspiration to provide opportunities to book your hotel, to book your activity, to book your restaurant, right? Ways you introduce merchants, brands, and advertisers into the thinking, into the inspiration and planning aspect of it. Day of trip, it's a different mindset, right? Get to the airport. And that's where our app kind of stands out as very instructive. Here's where you drop your baggage, your gate is. You have within the clubs, right? Opportunities for branding, opportunities for engagement, and again, you can think about different times in the clubs, right? Monday mornings, Thursday afternoons is the time that the business traveler travels. You have leisurely travel that can travel during the weekends. They vary, but it's that ability to capture that diverse audience at different points and inspire them with content that's relevant to their likes and interests based on their part of the journey.
I mean, I don't know what to say, Mike, but this is super interesting to me. Hearing all of this as someone who's not a media buyer, it sounds pretty incredible. So thank you for sharing all of that. When you run through the overall, I guess, parent of United, you have Mileage Plus, you have the United Airlines, you have Kinective Media Network. You're running partnerships across all of those from our brief chat prior. What exactly does that look like in terms of your partnerships? What are you looking for? And where do you see these partnerships either filling a void or expanding on your audience or your offering?
I mean, I love this part of my job. I always joke that it's my job to come up with good ideas. And there's some days where the ideas flow, and there's other days where I have to explain what I was thinking. But we've taken an approach to really focus on customer choice. And in doing so, we've been agnostic in the way that we're approaching many of our partnerships. And so travel adjacent partnerships have been the foundation of what Mileage Plus non-air loyalty. And I say this, Mileage Plus in itself, we use Kinective as well. It's the hub of innovation for United, right? We're leveraging technology and data to deliver this mission of really enriching traveler journeys. And the scale of the airline and our leading loyalty program, Mileage Plus, is a large part of that. You have Kinective Media, you have our credit card, you have the non-air loyalty partnerships, and that is your Marriott's and Avis's and our cruises. But we're also extending that to non-travel adjacent. And so you've seen things like Ticketmaster, Arala just launched, Vivid Seats, Televisa Univision, Spotify, right, came through my group. And so it's this ability to complement and enrich that journey at all different points, and not necessarily just because you're traveling, right? You and I are travelers, even though we're home today. I'm assuming you're at your house. Yet when we travel, be it for business and for leisure, our likes and interests follow us. So for instance, I was in Chicago this past week and I went to a Cubs game. I went to an Asian fusion restaurant. I went to things that I would do if I was home as well. And so if I can create opportunities to show the utility of the mile, right? Opportunities to earn miles, opportunities to redeem miles, opportunities that just showcase the value of being a Mileage Plus member, where I have either exclusive or unique opportunities brought forth through these partnerships, I've created more incentive for someone to join Mileage Plus, to fly United. I've then created the opportunity to show the utility of the mile far beyond, just solely redemption or accrual for air. Like that's where I'm very focused on creating this just sort of no brainer in terms of why would I want to be a Mileage Plus member? Why would I want to fly United? Because I get this. And I only get this through Mileage Plus, right? That's where my head's at.
You mentioned like so many aspects of like the consumer journey, right? Like even the conquest part, it's the incentives to sign up, the benefits done there, but then the loyalty piece on the very like other side of the flow of like, why do I stick with United? Why am I staying with Mileage Plus? Whether it's the credit card incentives, I have a United Airlines credit card. I do it for the points. I do it for the lounge access. I do it because of the point incentives I get for booking my flight with United. I'll pay less or I'll pay more just knowing that I get extra points for it and I can use them and redeem them at some point in the future for a backpack or for any other item I want from the store. So for me, I could see the loyalty piece. Does that data available to you through your Mileage Plus loyalty program, does that also translate to how you target these users as well outside of just display? Are you using this to promote differently to them via email, via push notifications? Are you incentivizing them differently? Do you see this data and do you utilize that? And how do you possibly process so much information for hundreds of millions of people?
Yeah, I mean, like anything else, right? First and foremost, the sanctity and the privacy of all of our data, all of our traveler data is paramount. We ensure that we are privacy compliant across any and every possible regulation, legislation, and such. Our travelers are the most valuable, thing for us. And so it is upon us to ensure that the way we act always puts their safety, their data safety at the forefront. So, and I say that with conviction and passion because there are a number of bad actors out there. And for us, we want to be very smart and conservative with the way we approach things to ensure that safety and to ensure that, they remain, our primary focus and quite frankly, just the inspiration to do better. And so the way we capture, when we think about it, our traveler data we talked about, right? It's upwards of, 63 million active Mileage Plus members. And even in the ability then to understand, you create these like attitudinal, behavioral, transactional, and lifestyle like segments. And using data as the horizontal, it allows us to think about how can we personalize the journeys. Today, each seatback screens are not on an individual basis. So if you and I were sitting next to each other, our seatback screen would be the same. In the future-facing moment, we want to have that personalization such that, my screen would say, hey, here's a baseball game, here's a golf course, here's a restaurant that you may want to go to. And assuming that you may be an outdoor enthusiast, right? Or very affluent in the arts and culture, great, here's places to hike. Here are the museums and exhibits that are pertinent to your interests. And having that as such a way of sort of the surprise and delight, but at the same time, the exploration, right? Just because Mike went to a Cubs game doesn't mean he may want to go to a Cubs game next. I just may be someone who is a sports enthusiast. And so the Blackhawks are in town or the Bulls are playing or there's, Fanatics exhibit somewhere that's, of my interest. So we really focus on just ensuring that we're providing like relevant content, and content can come in the form of ads, can come in the form of video, can come in the form of, text in such a manner that creates that incentive to act upon. And we'll test and learn as well, right? I'm not a hockey fan, but show me a Blackhawks ad and I may not go. And, next time you show me the Bulls ad, whatever the case is, or story, whatever. And so we're trying to use our, we use the insights and the intelligence to form the right message for the right person at the right time.
Question for you: when the industry's changed a lot over the last couple of years, whether it's incentives like or changes like SPO or the introduction of AI or the scaling of AI solutions in market, whether that's media buying or optimizations or anything else, what are you most excited about? What trend do you look at the most on a regular basis that you think will impact United and will impact Kinective Media for the better in the future?
I was sort of a nonchalant user of AI, in 24, which is ages ago at this point. And we've placed a large focus on AI internally. And today we're using AI for good. We're using it to help translate or make articles available for, those who may be like vision impaired. We use it on a concierge-like basis, across saying, hey, I'm going to San Francisco. What should I do? And that the generative function, the agentic generative function for us is a way to really communicate in a more efficient basis with our travelers. And I think about how I can take that and expand to really help with the traveler journey. And I keep saying traveler journey, and it's not because I get compensated for every time I say it. I think as I think about all the people we fly, they're all individuals. And that's really the basis of it's not just a paying customer. It's a person. It's a human being. It's someone that has likes and interests. It's a mother, father, partner, brother, sister, whatever the case is. And I want to be able to create the most personalized journey for them. And as I think about, our mission, and as we build our partnerships through loyalty, through advertising, through whatever the case is, I want to be able to serve them with the most relevant, helpful opportunity from a catalog of thousands, right? And so this idea of hoping people find what they want versus being able to leverage tools like generative AI. This is what I know about you. Here's what I can do. And here's how I can do it quickly. That's important for me, right? It's important for us to do things for good. And as I think about, from the Mileage Plus standpoint and the non-air partnerships, we've innovated the Mileage Plus ecosystem significantly over the past 2 years. And what we're bringing in the future is going to make what we've done so far, look like chicken scratch. And I'm very excited about that.
Awesome. I am too, Mike. And I wanted to thank you and thank Kinective Media, United, for having you here as my guest today. Mike, I really enjoyed this chat. Thank you. Thank you again for being here.
I could not be happier to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Exclusive inventory, fragmented tech, high minimums. Programmatic is built for the few, but advertisers need scale without the complexity. AdLib sits above it all, orchestrating activation, optimizing 24/7, 365, and giving you back 40% of the time spent juggling multiple DSPs and media partners. One login, every platform. No trade-offs. Go to getadlib.com, GETADLIB.com.
Hello, and welcome back to The Refresh, your weekly download on what went down in advertising. I'm Kate with Marketecture, and today is Tuesday, September 9th. This week on The Refresh, we're obviously covering the heavy hitter, Google's search antitrust trial remedies ruling, and we'll also take a look at why media buyers are blocking Publicis-owned Epsilon SSP and Perplexity's pullback from paid ads. Before we kick off, shout out to our sponsor Adform for their support. 40% of internet users are unreachable on cookieless browsers due to identity fragmentation, causing wasted impressions, inflated CPAs, and revenue loss. Reclaim your audience and find your 40 with Adform. Now let's get into it. Starting things off with Google, who was just spared from the harshest remedies in its search antitrust trial, thanks largely to the passage of time and a search landscape that moved faster than the legal system could. In the most dramatic season yet of big tech antitrust, Google's finale fell flat for viewers as Judge Mehta dished out his verdict in Google's search antitrust remedies phase of the trial. And I think the last time we as a society felt this level of incredible collective disappointment just might have been the Game of Thrones finale. So where did Judge Mehta land? Let's review. No sell-off of Chrome, a top DOJ request. No spin-off of Android, also a DOJ priority. And no restriction on payments to other big players like Apple or Samsung to make Google products like Chrome, Search, or Gemini the default on their platforms or devices. This means Google can continue paying these partners to preload or feature its products as long as those contracts do not establish exclusivity for Google. Judge Mehta explained his decision a bit by acknowledging the potential fallout of banning payments altogether, writing, "Cutting off payments from Google almost certainly will impose substantial, in some cases crippling, downstream harms to distribution partners, related markets, and consumers, which counsels against a broad payment ban." As another part of his remedies, Judge Mehta also ruled that user choice screens, for example, the option to choose which browser you want to use, won't be required, more or less saying UX design isn't up to the courts to decide. Finally, Google must share some of its search data, like index and user interaction data, but not ads data, with qualified competitors. The DOJ's proposed version of this remedy pushed for more extensive data sharing, but ultimately this request was at least partially granted. The remedies will go into effect in 60 days, last for 6 years, and will be enforced by a newly formed committee. Many Google observers and commentators have already dismissed the outcome as underwhelming. Digiday's Ronan Shields may have summed it up the best, though. Even when Google loses, they win. The DOJ set out to prove that Google is a monopolist, and for that goal, mission accomplished. But the remedies ruling was meant to curb monopolistic power, and skepticism is high over whether these measures will actually accomplish that. There was a critical factor at play that altered the course of this case and influenced Judge Mehta's remedies decision, though: the entrance of generative AI to the market. When this case was filed back in 2020, it didn't anticipate the disruption that would occur in the search landscape as a result of generative AI. Judge Mehta argued that competitors new and old, like OpenAI, Perplexity, Meta, and Microsoft, would provide healthy competition to Google in the years ahead. Overall, I think we could speculate on whether these remedies will restore competition to the market, or if the market is restoring competition to itself. That said, in the last 6 months, Google has aggressively reasserted itself in the AI race, rolling out AI overviews, launching AI mode, its ChatGPT-like interface to US users and across 180 countries, and doubling down on embedding AI into its search ecosystem. At the same time, Google still controls roughly 65 to 70% of global browser share, with Apple trailing in second place at around 15%. And as we know, Google search remains preferenced on Apple devices. On top of this, Statista recently reported that paid search captures about 40% of ad spend, and Google is the main beneficiary here. And sure, users are broadening their search behavior, turning to TikTok, Instagram, ChatGPT, and Reddit, but it's hard to see those shifts putting a serious dent in Google's dominance anytime soon. All of this could lead us back to the inevitable: another antitrust trial in another decade. Only this time, the main storyline will be centered on who reigns in generative AI. And if history is any indicator, you can guess who's going to show up with some serious main character energy. Moving on from Google, few things in life are certain except for death, taxes, and a programmatic supply chain that's wildly convoluted. So it wasn't entirely shocking when news surfaced that some of the largest holding companies, independent agencies, and brands only recently realized that they were indirectly funneling media spend to one of their biggest rivals, Publicis, via Epsilon SSP, which Publicis owns. And to be fair here, Publicis never buried the lead on the fact that it would benefit from its Epsilon acquisition. Access to data and an additional revenue stream was always part of the plan and kind of the whole point. What did get buried, though, is data transparency and which hands inventory was passing through within programmatic auctions. Given the opacity and complexity of the programmatic supply chain, which has never been short on shenanigans, it's believable that buyers didn't realize the inventory they were purchasing was being resold by Epsilon SSP through another SSP, a practice known as multi-hop reselling. Along the way, it's plausible that data leakage may have occurred, including details like how much a buyer was willing to spend on a piece of inventory or exposing key elements of their audience targeting strategy. The revelation prompted some buyers to block Epsilon SSP altogether. And for me, it resurfaces a broader, long-standing question that I've had. What are the implications of large holding companies or similar industry giants owning critical pieces of the ad tech ecosystem? Doesn't that remove independence, introduce bias, and create conflicts of interest? In this case, the answer seems to be yes, despite Publicis' insistence that, quote, the data is not logged or stored by Epsilon SSP. Sure, Jan. Ultimately, this story highlights multiple facets of the plague that is the ad industry's ongoing struggle to create a clean, mutually beneficial programmatic supply chain. It not only reinforces the critical importance of supply path optimization and the fact that the industry still struggles to implement it effectively, partially as a result of being unable to consistently gain access to comprehensive, transparent data, it also underscores the dialogue around this story that's highlighted a less talked about factor: misplaced expectations around who exactly is responsible for ensuring ad spend flows through efficient, ethical supply paths. I've noticed the media buyers themselves increasingly being thrown under the bus, with comments boiling down to things like, well, any savvy programmatic buyer should be able to look at their log files and see that this is obviously happening. Yeah, sure, ideally, but in reality, this is a top-down organizational responsibility. Buyers need to be trained to apply best practices and discernment when purchasing inventory, like knowing how to read log files. They also need the time and bandwidth to focus on these details. many are juggling multiple accounts, struggling just to stay afloat, and understandably take the path of least resistance to achieve their clients' goals. I'm not saying it's right necessarily, I'm just saying that this is the reality. One way to circumvent this a bit is to establish more sophisticated supply path optimization efforts at a senior level. Organizations should have dedicated teams and processes in place to vet their supply and remove inefficiencies, which ultimately ensures that buyers are working with the cleanest supply paths possible from the start. And to be fair here, a lot of leading DSPs and buying platforms do already have this in place. And of course, all of this is easier said than done. The programmatic supply chain is incredibly complex, technically dense, and even seasoned ad tech veterans are grappling with how to fix it. But part of the solution just may come from the very stories and industry debates that are occurring, like this one. By shining a light on these issues, the industry has a better shot at fostering awareness, accountability, and eventually building a healthier ecosystem. Finally, let's close things out with Perplexity's recent pullback in its ads offering. When ChatGPT hit the scene a few years ago, some of the first questions advertisers asked were, how will generative search be monetized? Which was quickly followed by, what is the right way to monetize generative search? Those are both questions Perplexity seemed to set out to explore as one of the first and only players to roll out ads within its self-described AI answers engine. Of all the AI search platforms to hit the scene, Perplexity seemed most willing to experiment with what monetization might look like in a generative environment. But now, the company seems to have pulled back on those efforts, a shift underscored by the recent departure of its head of advertising, Petrella. So, where or why are AI search ads falling flat? According to Ad Age, advertisers said Perplexity's ad efforts lacked clear value or direction. In my opinion, the broader challenge with AI ads today is that platforms are simply porting over legacy formats that worked well in traditional paid search or seem like the most obvious answer to the problem, like sponsored follow-up questions or suggestions. On top of this, both consumers and advertisers are unclear on the value proposition of these ads. And for advertisers, the formats don't address or resolve their uncertainties surrounding them. Exactly how will my brand be mentioned? In what context? How often? What outcome or outcomes do these formats support? And how am I going to measure that? Traditional search is subject to some of this same uncertainty, but the value exchange has always been clear. I pay you, Google, to drive clicks to my website and ideally generate some sort of conversion action. This doesn't exist in generative search, given one of the main designs of these platforms is to keep users in that interface. Traditional search also gave advertisers clear strategies that they could apply to control their outcomes in both paid and organic efforts. And these were more reliable prior to the introduction of generative search, but they still exist. That type of control hasn't yet materialized in AI environments. There are also macro factors at play here. For most generative AI platforms and advertising products, the necessary infrastructure to create interoperability between systems, tools, and applications isn't in place yet. Protocols like Anthropic's Model Context Protocol, or MCP, or Google's Agent-to-Agent, aka A2A, are starting to gain traction, but full interoperability is still a ways off. For their part, brands will need to make sure their data is available in AI-friendly formats to help embed themselves in chatbot conversations or browsing journeys. A final factor at play is that Perplexity and those like them have yet to settle on a final product state. Right now, their consumer access points, and therefore ad opportunities, are taking on multiple forms. A website interface inside an existing browser like Chrome, which most of us are familiar with, an AI assistant extension such as Anthropic's Claude for Chrome Pilot, or a standalone AI browser itself. Without that final state, ad opportunities will remain either experimental or non-existent for the time being. Even Google needed some time to roll out AdWords after launching Google Search. Search arrived in 1998, AdWords arrived 2 years later in 2000. AI is evolving rapidly, but today we're still in a place where platforms, developers, and consumers alike don't fully know what comes next. Ad solutions will materialize, but we may need to sit tight and reset our expectations around what those solutions will actually end up looking like. That's all we have time for this week. Thanks for joining us for the refresh, and we'll catch you next week.